Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we are changing the mental health narrative, bringing hope and solutions. Here's your host, Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist.
Wayne Dumas has worked in the IT industry for 40 years in a variety of roles, but has always focused on operational support. Wayne currently is the Chief Operating Officer for Network Data Systems in Schaumburg, Illinois, an IT consulting and managed services organization. Well, thank you for being here, Wayne. It's great to see you finally face-to-face.
Nice to meet you too, Dr. Tim.
Can you tell us a little bit about what would make a guy like you in business at such a high level want to interact with or entertain something like the Optimal Being program? What got you started on this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, a colleague of ours, mutual colleague, brought this to our attention, to our attention the whole Optimal Being program. And it was very intriguing the way that they approached it to us, because they approached it in a way of it could bring greater efficiencies and making your teams happier and more efficient, which is absolutely in line with our culture here at Network Data Systems. So we had a conversation with Mark, and we discussed a little bit more about the program. So what we decided to do as a starter is to have myself as an executive go through this to understand the values that it brings and make sure that it's in alignment with the culture that we bring here at NDS. Our primary culture is around people first, and really making sure that we're doing the right things for our customers. So this program, all in all, is absolutely in line with those types of cultures and that kind of thinking. So we decided that we would go ahead and take, a step into this by having myself go through it and identify the different areas where we think that it could bring value back to our company. And that's how we really got started with the program with Mark.
Well, and it does make some sense, since whenever you're dealing with people, you need to communicate.
Mhm.
And whenever you're communicating with people, you're likely to trigger emotional states.
Yep.
And when you trigger emotional states to a certain degree, it kind of disrupts the communication. So it is a powerful set of tools for the individual. But when you think about it, companies and corporations are made up of individuals. So what was your experience of engaging in the program?
Actually, I think the program was phenomenal, and I keep telling Mark it was almost like he planted the seeds along the way for me, because as I was going through the content, I was coming across some real life experiences that were matching up very, very closely with the content that we were going through and some of the tools and some of the exercises that we were going through. So it was very helpful for me, and I'll give you a couple of examples. First of all, when they first start off, you do this personal code assessment where it identifies how you rate in the 10 different buckets that are rated for this program. And the three things that came out for me was the three things that were the lowest on the list, which are the things that we really stress and work on, is stress management, the nutrition and the diet, digestive system, and then the presence of truth. And it was quite comical, because I'm all about truth, and I always think that that's one of my big pillars here for our company, is that we all speak the truth, and that's what our morals and our values are all about, is being truthful and honest with people. It was very intriguing to me that that was one of my lower scores, and after speaking with Rex and with Mark as my mentors, it came out of the conversation that it wasn't necessarily about me speaking the truth. It was about me believing in what people are speaking back to me, and sometimes I have problems dealing with what people are conveying back to me. And I think a lot of that comes from my background. I'm an operations person by nature, and operations people are typically very pessimistic people, and they need to see things as opposed to just hearing things. So I think that's where that came from. And they took me down a path of digging into my background and trying to understand and really peeling back an onion to understand what is it about truth and believing people and trusting in people where I'm really lacking. So in using the tools that we did, we were able to dissect, my issues with belief and trusting people, and got to a point where now I am a much more open person. So not that I'm always believing and trusting in people, but I'm more neutral going into conversations, as opposed to before I had these perceptions in my brain of certain situations, because I've been there, I've lived it. And if you do it one time, it's kind of, you got burnt once and you're not going to go down that path again. So I was coming to conversations and having conversations with people with these perceptions,
A bias.
yeah, in the program they call it, the actuality. The conversation is going down a path and everybody hears the actuality, but your reality is your perceptions, taint what the actual conversation is about. So after learning about that and understanding what it was that I was doing in these conversations, now I am a much more neutral, grounded person when I'm coming to conversations. I'm coming to conversations open and listening to the present conversation, not rehashing things that have come up in the past. So that alone is, for me, was really, really a major shift in the way that I think and the way that I operate now.
And that'll make a big difference in the flow of communication between you and the people you work with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because now it's really a two-way conversation, as opposed to, me already coming with a preconceived notion of how this is going to end, and not really trusting in and believing in the truth that's out there.
So have you gotten any feedback from anybody else you work with or team members that they notice a difference in the way you're approaching these conversations?
Yeah, actually, my teammates as well as my family. So with Father's Day being this past weekend, I was together with my kids and we were talking about the past and the present. And my one daughter brought up that she felt like I was much more calm of an individual and much more open to listening to conversations. And then I told her about the optimal being. And this is my daughter, who's a yoga instructor. So a lot of the practice that we have in the optimal being is similar to yoga and meditation. The fact that, you're supposed to be calm, you're supposed to use your breathing and center yourself, and, not come with preconceived notions like I was just talking about. So she was the one that, caught on to that, and understanding that I do feel like, I'm coming off as a much different person to her. And I've heard the same thing from people that I work with as well.
Wonderful, because that's where I look for. I look for the validation first within myself if I feel it's of value, and then I go seek out people that I trust and respect to see if they're, if my perception is in alignment with theirs. So,
Yes.
well, so one big challenge for you was in honoring truth. And if I'm hearing it correctly, you had a filter that was expecting negativity or expecting betrayal or falsehood from others as you were engaging in these interactions. What's another area that you felt the Optimal Being program was able to help you with?
The other area was I have this issue where I didn't really feel like I was worthy of the position that I'm in my career. And I couldn't really explain it. And we went through several different of the tools that we had. And in dissecting the issues that I'm having, Mark and Rex did an amazing job of taking me through the mind shifter tools, and really dissecting where I come up with this, I'm not worthy of the position, or I don't really earn, or I haven't, paid my dues enough to get to the position that I'm in. And it really all came back to all the way back into my childhood. So as we continue to drill into the problem using the tools that we have, we dug into why I'm feeling as though I have to speak up, and I can't be the person that's sitting back and waiting and listening for conversations. I have to be more direct and action oriented as opposed to listening to people within my team. And it came down to, my parents were both, blue collar workers. And, when you grow up in a family where that's who you are, you feel like that's where you're going to live up to. So I'm going to live up to just being a blue collar worker. And that's where my bar was at. So as I continue to go through my career and as I continue to advance, I always tend to look back and wonder, well, how did I get here? And do I really deserve to be where I'm at? And, after speaking with them and working my way through this, now I understand that, the trail that I've blazed to get to where I'm at makes me worthy of being in the position that I'm at. And I can feel a lot more comfortable and confident in who I am and how I manage and how I lead people, as opposed to always second guessing myself. And in the back of my mind, I always had it where I felt like there was something more that I needed to be doing, or I needed to prove something to people, as opposed to, I've earned this and I've proven it over the years, so I don't have to prove it moment by moment by moment. So that was another thing that really opened my eyes within this program, that allowed me to understand more about, things that have happened years and years and years ago that were still adversely affecting me in my business today, and even in my personal and my business relationships that I was having today, because I still didn't just trust in myself.
Right. So it sounds like a very similar pattern. When you were talking about the communication, you would go into an interaction with people prejudging that they were going to be dishonest or in some way covering something up and hiding things from you that you would need to see to do your job.
Absolutely.
In the second category you're talking about, it seems like you would approach situations and evaluating your worth based on a prejudgment that you're not worthy, that you're only capable of that blue collar level. And so that's like that filter that you were looking at everything through. Mm-hmm. It's a false belief, like a core belief. And when that gets understood, seen directly, and dismantled, then you're free to relate more to your job based on what you did to earn it.
Yep, absolutely.
And so it's like a dismantling of a bias or a false belief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's where the value in this program really came for me is, after years and years of building the person who you are, sometimes you have to tear all that apart, and you have to look at yourself, and you have to really understand who you are and why you're the way you are. And I mentioned my operations background, and in operations, everything is always broke, and you're always trying to fix things, and that's the nature of the job. And it does tend to get to a point where people start to believe and even talk in negative statements. And in the program, it was clear that, if you're starting with a negative, you can expect to have a negative outcome. Where if you change your mindset and then the way that you think and the way you approach things, you're going to have a more positive output. And the one comment that I remember from some of the videos here is, don't start by saying, let me see if I can't accomplish something. Let's talk about, I want to, or let me see how I can accomplish something. And it's just that simple. It's when somebody says, don't look at the blue shirt that's right in front of you that Tim's wearing. The first thing you're going to do is look at the blue shirt. So you're creating a destiny for yourself if you start with those negative conversations. So yeah, all of that into a positive really has helped as well.
Yeah, being more conscious about what I'm focusing on, because whatever I focus my attention on, number one, I'm going to be more aware of. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about the power of the creative power of thought, I'm going to create more of whatever I focus most on.
Yep. Yeah, my daughter, like I told you before, she's a yoga instructor. She's always taught me over the years in her yoga practice, if you want something, put it out into the universe, and the universe will hear it, and the universe will respond. And that's very true as far as, putting those positive thoughts and actions out there. And it makes people see you in a different light. It makes yourself feel better about yourself. So it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, agreed. And there are some wonderful tools within the Optimal Being program that are very specific that I can pick up. I can pick up and I can use without having to know all of what I might discover. I don't have to figure it out with that conscious logical part of my brain. I can just recognize that I feel stuck or I don't like the feeling I'm having, and then apply these very practical tools. I would imagine that was one of the attractions to someone like you is it's not just, well, go meditate on this. It's here's a tool to use.
Yeah, that was one of the things that just recently came up through the program is, now we're into actually using the optimal tool. There's a lot of other tools and tool sets within it, but the optimal tool and the way that I've decided to use this is, 3 or 4 times a week, I'll sit down at the end of my day. And if there's something that's bothering me, something that hasn't come to a good or a positive conclusion for me, I'll write that down and I'll run it through the optimal tool, which is a segment or a bunch of separate sections asking questions and looking for responses. And it basically allows you to dig into what it is that's bothering you and figure out what you need to do to change that outcome or change the way you're thinking about that. Is it a goal that was set that was too high that you're not comfortable with, and you need to go back and you need to realign that goal that you have with reality or something that you believe that you and your team could be successful at. But the tool allows you to take a problem that you just really can't come to a conclusion yet and work it through there. Now I've heard that there's some people that have been through this program and you continue to practice that over time. You can almost do that on the fly with people, but having the tools and having the in the booklet that you can actually walk through that process, it helps your mind train your mind in deducing what these problems are and having better clarity as to what the problems are and how to fix that and make it right for yourself and for others.
Yeah, I have 47 years of experience doing therapy and getting different trainings. And one of the things I really appreciate about this program is it starts with just observing how our minds, our thoughts, our bodies, our energy systems, the emotions, how they work. And then in the Optimal Being program, the hope is that if you take that program, you learn about how your thoughts affect your emotions, affect the physical sensations, affect your goals, affect your perception. And once you're empowered with how that dynamic works, some of these tools are the actual step-by-step, here's how to correct it if you don't like the results you're getting.
Right.
And it leaves the space for everybody to create whatever kind of life they want. I might be a little bit more laid back than the next person. Somebody else might be more focused and driven. And it's perfectly okay. They can pick up the tools and get whatever kind of results they need based on their personality because they'll understand themselves better.
Right. Yeah, the other thing about the mind that I would add is, it was very intriguing in some of the videos and some of the data that they presented in that, your mind is a very, very powerful tool, and it takes, millions of data bits in at any given moment of things that are going on around you, but your mind only focuses on 8 bits of data at a time. So there's all of this information that's coming at your mind, but your mind is only able to focus in on certain things. And that's why it's so important when people talk about being in the present, being attentive to the conversation and being one-on-one with the conversation, as opposed to multitasking and doing something over here while somebody's talking and thinking you're catching all of that. Even if you're 100% focused, you're not going to catch everything, but being present, being focused on that conversation gives you a much greater chance of success in having understand what the person is trying to convey and really getting their point across and making that very clear in the conversation. So again, a lot of the things that they went through, it wasn't like it was the first time you've ever heard it, but it reinforces how you are and how your brain works and why you do some of the things that you do and understand how you're going to have to shift in order to become that optimal being.
Yeah, and the idea that just came to my mind as you were finishing up there is that when you understand that and you've got some tools for working with it, you're back in a place of choice. Whereas when you don't understand it and things are stirred up in you, you're just automatically reacting.
Correct.
And that's how so many of our people find that we have the same kinds of arguments with our team,
Yeah.
and we get stuck over the same kinds of issues. I recently heard somebody talk about how, as a couple, they realized they basically have 5 arguments over and over and over again. You know, one is on money, and one is on food, and one is on privacy and my stuff versus your stuff. And they've been married for 7 or 8 years, and they recognize they're just stuck having the same arguments over and over again. Whereas where you understand after the optimal being program some of the patterns that you have arise in you, now you can go in and make some changes in them.
Yeah, I truly think that in a lot of cases, and it sounds like even in the case that you're talking about that one couple, people are trying to fix the symptoms as opposed to really understanding what that's at the core of the problem. And that was another conversation that we had about myself is as we were dissecting some of these problems, I was thinking that it was one thing that was totally off in left field. And as we dug in and in and in and in, the core of the problem was just that, I was upset that I wasn't being heard. So I was presenting something and I thought I had a lot of good data behind it. And after presenting, my case and all of the facts that I had researched, all the time that I had put into it, my suggestions were just discarded, and then we went in a different direction. And then I was showing that I was upset with the direction we were going in, when in reality, it wasn't the direction per se. It was just that, over here, I was talking and I was just not heard during that whole conversation. And that's what I was upset about. But then my anger and everything was showing toward the new direction and the new goals that we were being set. And it had nothing to do with the goals per se. It was more about the core and understanding what the crux of the problem was for me. And then once I understand that, now I know the next time these types of things come up, how do I need to present myself and what do I need to say differently to make sure that I'm heard and, in a respectful way, but also making sure that you're getting your points across and being heard.
Well, and I would imagine that when you become aware of a situation like that, a pattern like that in yourself, it gives you the ability to step back and evaluate. So how many times has this happened in the past? Or is it happening with one of my coworkers where they're not really upset with the direction we're taking, but they have an emotional issue that's triggered? And if I can tune into that, I might be the sounding board for them.
Yeah.
To help them release their upset and then be able to refocus on the path we're taking. And they might realize, just as you did, that they weren't really upset with the new path. They had some emotional upset they needed to dispel.
Yep, exactly.
So is there an example that's come up in your work, either for yourself or as you're interacting with teams of people, where you think what you've learned so far from optimal being is actually making a significant difference at a business level?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's helping my entire team, and we read lots of books together, and we do many activities together to try to build a stronger team. And one of the books that we live and die by over here is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And in that, it's all about building trust, and then it's based off of a pyramid where trust is the very bottom. And if you don't have that trust level, you can't really get a fully functioning team together. And there are times that we see and hear and feel different things. But recently, I mean, there's been a lot of pressures in businesses right now because of the whole pandemic thing, and not that the pandemic itself is the cause of the problem, but the real problem that we're experiencing is that business isn't moving at the speed of business anymore. So things are much slower in evolving because, people are remote and they don't have time to get together and huddle and make decisions as quickly. So things have slowed down for businesses altogether. So on a sales side, we're seeing and feeling the pressures of not getting those new, customers and accounts and contracts lined up as quickly as we've seen historically. So as we were going through these problems, and it was creating a stir within my team, because we're getting to a point where the service delivery team is a little bit angry at the sales guys because the sales guys aren't producing as quickly as everybody would like them to do. So now I was able to use some of the tools and some of the conversations that I've had and experienced through the optimal being, and using that in a way so people can now better understand and put themselves in the positions that the other people are put in. So when the service delivery people are angry because things aren't happening as quickly as they are or they should have been happening in the sales side, now we can put each other in each other's shoes and let them know the experiences. So now we talk through and walk through their experiences that they're having and the results that they're seeing, which makes people understand the problem that we're all experiencing right now. Because it's easy to, not hear that part of the conversation and to, again, judge quickly as to, well, why can't you do that? Because we were doing that before, and we're saying that the pandemic's over. We would just think that we flip a switch and we're back in it again. But now everybody is able to walk through that because we all believe in each other, we all trust in each other, and we can have those conversations using some of the tools that I've learned through the optimal being. So that in itself has helped eliminate some of the dysfunction that we were seeing within our team, and it allows us to be a much more aligned team and working to accomplish our goals that we have. So while we may not be accomplishing the sales goals that we have in the charter that we've initiated, there's other things that we're able to divert some of our people and some of our attention to so we can accomplish those. So again, it's more, the pushing and pulling of different levers. So we know that this isn't working right now, but we can dedicate some of our resources to get something else accomplished, where when we do come out of this and sales really kicks in, we'll be ready for different opportunities for different clients as well.
Well, and you highlight another real big benefit to me of the Optimal Being program, which is it is such a good set of tools to integrate with all kinds of other good tools. So you just mentioned, the 5 dysfunctions of teams and that book, or there's a whole series of things most successful business people have learned over the years, and they're their core tools, and they like them and they don't want to abandon them.
Mhm.
And that's what I like about the Optimal Being program is this is a set of tools that can fit with practically any other model that I like that's been helpful in the past. And it brings clarity and this simple effectiveness that makes it all better.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say that the optimal being adds to those other tools. So had I not gone through the optimal being program, reading 5 dysfunctions of a team and implementing that process can take you to a certain level, but knowing, about centering yourself, knowing about trusting in others, listening, those parts of this program, and making sure that we have clarity in our conversations and the emotional intelligence that we've gained from the tools, all of that adds to it. So it makes you a better person that can process, things like the five dysfunctions much better.
Well, and when you're talking about one of the primary 5 dysfunctions, that base level of trust, here you are, a higher executive who was going into almost every interaction without trusting, with the opposite of trust, with this big doubt, with this filter of I'm expecting to be lied to or to be deceived in some way. And when you have that operating, you can read that book on 5 dysfunction as much as you want. But if you're not aware that you've got basically an inner filter that pops up that says, I'm not going to trust what these people are saying, it makes it hard to live into what's
Absolutely.
recommended.
Mhm.
Is there something about this program that, as we're moving toward the end of our time together, that I haven't even mentioned yet, or that you haven't brought up yet, you want to make sure that you want to talk about?
Um, I think the only other thing that I would say is, it's like any learning experience that you go into. I mean, whether you're reading a book or whether you're going to a class or, taking a certification or whatever. I mean, you have to make sure that you're prepared to go into this in a learning experience, and you're open to learning, and you're open to looking at and identifying problems and being real about this. This program is even more so than some of the other things I mentioned, like reading a book, because if you're not in the right set going into this, you're going to struggle with trying to really get down to the root of your issues and your problems, and identifying opportunities for improvement for yourself. So you definitely have to make sure that the people that are prepared to go into this have the right mindset going into this, and they're willing to dissect themselves, and they're really willing to uh, commit themselves to this practice. You can get a lot out of it if you go into it with the right mindset. And I feel like I've gotten a lot out of it over the last several weeks that I've been going through this program. It's taught me the importance of being calm and living in the present. It's taught me the importance of being completely honest with myself primarily, and with everybody else around me. So I think the program itself adds a lot to a person, as long as the people going into this are coming into it with the right mindset and they're willing and able to make those changes in their lives.
And I would think, and what comes to mind as you say that, is that a sense of trust and safety would be essential for that, to be able to create that atmosphere.
Mhm.
Um, I'm hoping that your experience with the Optimal Being team and the mentors was just that, that
Absolutely.
that it was safe to do the work you needed to do.
Yeah, and they took me to levels that I was not anticipating through our initial conversations. I expected that it was going to be a little bit of content, a little bit of conversations, but like I said, some of the conversations that we dug into, they dug extremely deep, and the team was phenomenal in identifying and helping me to identify some of these areas for or opportunities for improvement that I have in my life. And it was very simple for them to identify those. It was very comfortable with having those conversations that we had. All in all, it was a very, very good program for me.
Excellent. And my experience with it has been that one of the things that makes it work when a team goes through this is the from the top down, people constantly reminding everyone involved that we're all the same. We've all got our issues. And
Mhm.
this isn't about any level of one-upmanship. If I'm
Yep.
doing one-upmanship, that means there's an issue for me to dismantle.
Yep.
There's no need for me to prove I'm better than somebody unless I have a hidden belief that I'm not as good as somebody. And
Exactly.
that would be my work. So that creates that safe environment.
Mm.
Well, I greatly appreciate your willingness to talk about this with us today. And I hope you continue to see the good results that many others have from Optimal Being. And if you're willing, I'd love to have you back in 6 months or a year and give an update to see if you have any other stories of success and personal growth.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm still writing down all my aha moments. So, yeah, I'm sure I'll continue to have those moments and using the tools, and love to come back in 6 months and talk about it.
I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Tim.
Wayne Dumas has worked in the IT industry for 40 years in a variety of roles, but has always focused on operational support. Wayne currently is the Chief Operating Officer for Network Data Systems in Schaumburg, Illinois, an IT consulting and managed services organization. He continually seeks out opportunities to enhance himself as a person and a leader. Over the past years, he has read books on leadership, self-help books, and attended dozens of conferences. Having participated in the Optimal Being program, he wants to share his experiences with others. Wayne is a husband and father who has lived in the northwest suburbs of Chicago for 26 years. He has been married to his wife Annette for 35 years. He has 3 adult offspring, Ashley, Kelly, and Chris, and 1 grandson, Glenn.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.